Patrick, can you hear me?
Yes, Lewis, I can hear you, but I've lost the audio to the chamber.
That's what I'm worried about too.
Okay.
Me too.
Let's see if they can see that message.
Thanks.
It's not on yet. Is it?
Yep.
Okay. Call the order. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's Wednesday, February 22nd, 2022, 2023. Yes. The Rice Creek Watershed District. Call to order. Roll call. All managers are present except for Manager Robertson, who's absent with prior notice. Setting the agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, we need to set and appoint a secretary pro tem for
All right.
today's meeting.
We'll do that first thing. With that addition, any other additions? Hearing none, do we have a motion
I move that we approve the agenda
as adjusted?
as adjusted, yes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Because our secretary, Manager Robertson, is absent today with prior notice, we need a secretary pro tem. Manager Wagaman, would you please perform that for us?
Yes, I would.
So I'd move that Manager Wagaman act as our secretary pro tem.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Approval of minutes, February 6, 2023.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the February 6, 2023 workshop of the Rice Creek Board of Managers workshop.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain. I was
Abstain.
gone with prior notice.
And I am also going to abstain. We won't have three votes. I'm going to, since I've been told I can vote, even though I was present and heard the whole thing,
You can even vote if you,
I'm going to vote.
you could, Mr. President, you can even vote if you weren't at the meeting and you've read the minutes and you feel comfortable with them.
There you go. And I do. So all in favor say aye.
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 And with that one abstention, any negatives? No?
Mr. Chair, I move approval of the February 8th, 2023 regular meeting of the Rice Creek Board of Managers.
Second.
Again, I wasn't present, but I will vote, so we have three votes. I have read them, and I have no reason to doubt their accuracy.
I will abstain. I was gone for that meeting with prior notice.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And with one abstention, no, it goes 3 ayes. No nays. That takes us then to the consent agenda.
President Bradley, staff have 2 applications for your consideration today. Both are presented without changes.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have just one question on the 23-002, and it's not actually on this permit. I'm just wondering if, I've heard stuff around the neighborhood that they're having problems getting, are having issues with the gas station on the corner with the pollution issue. I'm just wondering if anybody knows anything about that or has heard anything about that more than I have.
Patrick, did you hear the question?
Yeah, Manager Wegman, I specifically haven't heard anything. I guess I would note that this is in close proximity to the city of Blaine's somewhat recent water treatment plant. So I know that they are a little more attentive to infiltration in the area and what might be allowed in this development area, but I haven't heard anything specific towards that gas station.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering.
Can we have a motion then?
Mr. President, I would move to Caprock permit number 22-114 and 23-002. In accordance with the Race Creek findings and recommendations dated February 14th, 2023.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 4-0. Mr. Administrator, what's next?
President Bradley, next you have the open mic for anyone that might be present.
Is there anyone on the phone? Other than our staff? All right, yeah, no one's present in the room. We will move on to the next agenda item, please.
Yes, President Bradley, first on your items requiring board action is the 2023 Stormwater Management Grant Program applications. Catherine Nestor will walk you through that. She's online.
Welcome, Catherine.
Good morning. Thank you. Today, the board is being asked to consider approval of Resolution 2023-03, ordering and allocating grant funds to selected stormwater management grant program applications. The Rice Creek Watershed District has made $300,000 available for grant awards through this program in 2023. A total of $108,283 was requested through the 2 eligible applications, leaving $191,717 remaining unrequested. A public hearing was held on February 8th, 2023 to receive public comment on the applications pursuant to the relevant statute. One person remotely attended the public hearing and expressed support for the Birchwood Village application. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide an opportunity for additional discussion among the board members, if necessary, regarding the 2 eligible grant applications, resulting in a decision about which projects will be offered funding and at what level. Rice Creek Watershed District staff discussed the applications with the RCWD Citizen Advisory Committee during its meeting on February 1st, 2023. The CAC's individual scoring on each application was tabulated during the meeting, resulting in a final aggregate CAC score for each application. Houston Engineering also completed an independent review of each application. Houston Engineering's technical review memo for each application is included in the packet for the board's consideration. All input from the CAC and engineer has been considered by RCWD staff and incorporated into the final funding recommendation, which can be found in Table 1 on page 34 of your packet. And there is a proposed motion listed on that page as well. So At this point, there's a couple other things in the packet for your consideration too. The draft resolution, the cost share agreement template, and the engineer reviews and the actual grant applications. The 2 eligible grant applications are in there too. So with that, are there any questions?
Does anyone have any questions of her staff? Ms. Nestor?
Mr. Chair, I would move approval with the caveat that we have heard great detail about these at the workshop and prior meeting. So for that, I would move that we approve Resolution 2023-3 that authorizes that the Board of Managers hereby authorize the administrator to execute each of the respective cost share agreements between Rice Creek Watershed and the City of New Brighton and the City of Birchwood Village for any final non-material charges and on advice of council. And further resolve that the limit of the district's contribution to each of the projects is as followed. The City of New Brighton Stormwater Grant 2023, $8,283. And the City of Birchwood Village Wildwood Lift Station Replacement, $100,000.
Second,
Is there any discussion?
Mr. President. First of all, this is a partner meeting. And I want to point out that in the case with working with our partners in Birchwood, we have federal dollars that are involved here. And a congresswoman was down there, and so the staff met with her, and along with the mayor. And so this is Watershed District, city, federal government. It's not often we get the feds in to help, but they were very thankful. And second, at the advisory committee meeting, which I attended earlier this month, there was an interest and concern that the funding that hasn't been used about the deadline. And so I believe the district in the past, if we've had a good project come in, say in July or September, and these fundings were still there, which is about $200,000 or so, money was available, we've haven't cut them off to the point. I think that's to be made clear. That was the concern, was that this money would just go flow someplace else immediately, and that's not so. That wouldn't happen until maybe the end of the year. So with that, that's my only comment for the discussion.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I support your viewpoint that if something comes up and we have unspent money and it's appropriate for us to do so, we will obviously consider that.
Absolutely.
So it's a roll call vote. Bradley, yes. Robertson's absent. Wagaman?
Yes.
Waller?
Yes.
Wynant?
Yes.
And motion passes 4-0. Mr. Administrator, what's our next agenda?
Number 2 on the items requiring board action is the Ramsey County Lake Monitoring Services for 2023. Matt Koshin is here to help you with that.
Welcome to our meeting, Matt.
Thank you, Bradley. Thank you for having me here today. Here seeking approval for an agreement with Ramsey County for lake monitoring services. I believe the board is aware that we have a monitoring program at the Watershed District. We collect water quality data on streams, on ditches, and on lakes. The lake data specifically is used to track long-term trends. It's also very important for acquiring grant dollars, and oftentimes a monitoring program is a requirement for obtaining grant dollars or as part of the follow-up after a project might be done. So around the Rice Creek Watershed, there's several agencies that do lake monitoring. It's a cooperative effort. So we cooperate, well, district staff, first off, mainly myself and Catherine Nestor, who you just saw, will monitor 8 to 10 lakes annually. We have a volunteer monitoring program that also does about that many. And then staff at Ramsey County cover about 9 lakes. And staff at Ramsey County have been doing that for a long time, since about the early 1980s. So on many of the larger lakes in Ramsey County, we have a very long data set, which is very valuable for tracking long-term trends. For example, we put together some graphs a couple of years ago looking at very long-term trends of chloride, or road salt, applicable today with all the road salt that's being used after the big storm. and seeing increases over a 30 to 40-year time span. You wouldn't necessarily see that over a 5 to 10-year time span. You really need those long data sets. So there's a lot of value there. So we've been reimbursing Ramsey County for the costs that they incur for labor and equipment since about 2016. The costs this year are $24,461 and 35 cents. There's some additional detail. This is on page 64 of your packet, including the agreement that we would have with Ramsey County. But Board of Managers, that's about it, unless you have any questions.
Does anyone have any questions of Matt?
Well, Mr. President, I'll move to authorize the administrator to enter into an agreement with Ramsey County for lake monitoring services for 2023 in the amount not to exceed $24,461.35.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
And Mr. President, now I have some questions. So let me understand this a little bit, Matt. I'm not against this and have voted for it in the past many times, but a little bit of clarity here.
Mm-hmm.
We have, our staff does 8 to 10 lakes in Ramsey County.
Around the watershed. Not
Around the
Ramsey.
watershed.
Yes.
Okay, not necessarily just Ramsey County.
Correct.
And the 8 to 10 that the citizens do is that also around the watershed?
Yep, spread out around the watershed.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Are some of these in Ramsey County?
A few of them are, yes.
Okay. And then the 9 that, with the Ramsey County are just exclusively in Ramsey County for certain.
Correct. Those are
Okay.
exclusively in Ramsey
So
County.
I like the idea of long-term monitoring, which you know, history is a significant issue, I believe, in being able to understand what's going on.
Mhm.
So I'm very pleased to see that. I guess I noticed that the lakes that are not named here in the contract, you know, and that's something that just came I noticed. I was wondering which lakes we are. I noticed the description says we don't want to have overlapping, you know, et cetera.
Mhm.
So, but that was my only comment about it, was that the specific lakes weren't named. And I'd also, so that we know which ones we're talking about, you know, particularly. Do you know which ones they are offhand?
I'm sorry, Manager Waller, you're asking for which ones, which ones will be covered or which ones won't be covered?
Well, which ones are going to be covered in this contract? Exhibit A, it tells you, but the actual contract, well, I guess it's Exhibit A. I didn't read it far enough, I suppose.
Yep, I'm sorry, Exhibit A is shown there, so there's the list of lakes that will be covered. Otter, Bald Eagle, Josephine, Turtle, Long, Island, Johanna,
And White
Silver
Bear.
Lake, and White Bear.
Okay. So those are the larger ones.
Yes.
And then, so what does the district cover that's not listed here?
Manager Waller and the district staff mainly cover a handful of lakes. I would have brought a map now to give you the exact names of the lakes, but mainly lakes that don't have large boat access. So,
Okay.
For example, Pike Lake,
Right.
which is just upstream of Long Lake in Ramsey County. There's only canoe access there, so district staff cover that. Ramsey County staff typically only cover lakes that are accessible with a larger boat ramp.
So do we have an idea just how many lakes we cover in Ramsey County total? Between the citizens and the staff
Oh.
and the county?
I can get you a precise number. I could estimate
Right.
right now and say it's between 7 and 10, between district staff and the camp program, the volunteer program.
7 or 10, and then 9 plus 9 with the county.
That's an estimate. I could get you a more precise number.
But yeah, I understand, but no, that's a good idea. I mean, and then how many lakes are total in the county? That are in the district, I mean, you
Within
know.
the district.
Yeah.
Again, I could get
Well,
you.
you know, so my point here is to show that the comprehensive effort that's being looked at, and that also that it's not just Ramsey County that they keep a record on these 9 lakes. We've been keeping records for some time also on these other lakes, and developing the historical data. And so that's what I'm trying to get at, Matt.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Manager Waller. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Administrator.
Uh,
You say.
Board of Managers, Matt, just, it might be good for the record to explain why some of the lakes are listed twice on Exhibit A.
Oh, yes. Thanks, Nick. Yes, in Exhibit A, you might notice that, for example, Bald Eagle Lake is mentioned several times. White Bear Lake is listed several times. On some of the larger lakes, there are multiple monitoring locations around the lake. And that's typical for larger lakes. You know, very large lakes like Minnetonka on the West Metro, they might have upwards of 10 monitoring sites around the whole lake. Smaller lakes are typically only one monitoring site.
Thank you.
And one last question, Mr.
Certainly.
President. So how about the streams and ditches in Ramsey County? Are there any monitoring that goes on there? Even though we're not asking the county to do it, but
Yep, Manager Waller, indeed. There
Yeah.
are multiple stream and ditch sites around Ramsey County where we collect water quality data and flow data.
well, I don't remember us ever having a large presentation of the amount of monitoring you do, because we're just talking about Ramsey County here. And so far we're up to, probably around 30 different sites, I'm going to guess, including the streams and such. And that's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And the other counties we haven't even touched on yet as to what goes on there and theirs also. So that's a good thing, and to see if we can expand that program with long-term monitoring, so that over a 20-year period or 30-year period or 50-year period, because the DNR thinks in 50 years. They don't anything under 50 years, it doesn't register with those cats.
So, Mr. Administrator, I heard a request that not to come in because we're going to be quite busy this month at our workshop, but at one of our future workshops where we have a lighter calendar, possibly we could request that Mr. Koshin come forward with just kind of an overview of our monitoring program to re-inform all of us of what we're actually doing here.
Yes, President Bradley, Matt and I had a discussion about that yesterday, so in the works.
Very good. Thank you. Yes.
And I just want to repeat again that this is the baseline information that is needed in order to apply for state or federal grants. So this is our early investment in projects that we do, without which we wouldn't be in the queue for additional partnership dollars, as you said, John. So
Yeah,
thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
I look forward to having a kind of a monitoring report, such as we have a drainage report, as to what goes on annually on there. And I don't know, you give us an annual report also, somewhat of it. Yes, maybe we need a more formal one then.
Yeah, Manager Waller, it has been, I think, a couple of years since there's been a large formal presentation to the board on that. But I would welcome it and appreciate the interest.
When that's done on an annual basis, it gives you more of a grasp as to what the totality is and what's going on. And that's to me, that's important. Otherwise, some character like me wouldn't know.
Yeah. And I'd also suggest that as long as you're preparing that, you might want to share that with the CAC and let them know what we do in that area.
Very well.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I call the question.
Good idea. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Mr. Administrator, what's next?
Yes, next item is item 3, items requiring board action on page 73 of your packet. This is a Houston Engineering task order. It's our annual MS4 front subscription. This is the software that the district uses. Annually, we review that and look at potential adjustments to the software for implementation. It's basically a database. It's used for record and management of the district activity. That includes our regulatory program, projects and grants, as well as the district facilities and similar. This captures the data. It's retrievable for reporting of the district activity to the state. And it is, again, 2 parts. It's the software subscription itself, and then bugs and fixes to these electronic means that are always kind of in need of fine-tuning and maintaining their abilities that we look them to do, as well as adjustments that staff may have to pull data from the record. That does include some staff discretionary undertaking. I think it's important to point that out. These annual updates are budgeted in our 2023 approved budget under Fund 35, which is information management. So this one probably would have been one that, let me just make clear, yeah, 16,000 that the board president might have signed historically. But it is here before you for consideration. And just to be clear, on page 76, and Manager Waller brought it up before the meeting, the 16,000 and the $6,000 listed in the task order are additive. Those are two distinct elements.
Good. So let me explain what my preferred process is, because it came up in this last series of vote. What I'd like to do as a process is first ask if anyone has questions about it, then get a motion, then have a debate if there is a debate. Is there a problem with that? It's a process?
Mike, I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat that?
So one of the questions is, do we first call for a motion and a second before we ask questions of the administrator? I would prefer that we ask questions so we can decide whether we want to make a motion and then have a debate if there is a debate. That would be my preferred process. And if that's acceptable to you, that's how we will proceed. So does anyone have any questions of the administrator? Hearing none, can we have a motion?
Well, I would move that we approve and authorize the administrator to sign the HEI Task Order 2023-02 MS4 Front Annual Subscription and Implementation Services.
Is there a second?
I will second it, and I do have a question, though.
Please.
This is a one-time deal, I'm assuming, until we straighten out what we're gonna do.
In terms of approval, it is.
Stands on its own,
It is the
but-
process until process were to be changed, so yes.
Yeah, okay,
If the process gets changed.
yeah. I will second it.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, passes 4-0.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, you would like to move, as chair, you would like to move forward with each our agenda items if we have questions to the administrator prior to the,
Or staff,
or staff, prior to moving the motion.
correct.
And then we do the motion second, and if there's any further discussion, we can take it from
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
just as
Same
long
thing
as
we
we're
do-
clear.
Same thing we do at public hearings, for example, when we present to the
Yeah.
public.
Okay,
Same process.
okay.
So, Mr.
so,
Administrator.
Mr. President,
Sure.
just out of curiosity, I'm not up on my rules of Robert's order, but it seems to me that you could have discussion, the questions to the staff as part of the discussion. And so I'm just curious, is that within the proper procedures that we have
First
adopted?
of all, our procedures say that we will generally follow rules. We
Okay.
can certainly ask our lawyer who's on here. My viewpoint is that until people understand the issue, they may or may not want to move it and approve it. So they ought to be able to ask questions, not to pontificate. They can do the pontification when it comes time to discuss the motion.
So you're assuming that there would be no motion at all after the questions to the staff?
It's possible.
Yes, that's a possibility. That's true.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Administrator, what is our next item?
Next item requiring board action is number 4. That is on page 79. This is the Houston Engineering Task Order for GIS. That's Geographical Information Systems, and ditch records maintenance database subscription. This task order is for the district to renew that subscription, what we fondly refer to as Drainage DB, Drainage Database Software. and maintenance of the Geographic Information System, known as GIS, records management. This occurs annually. The GIS is layers of information, soils, topography, land use, public waters, all these types of things that are important in our work. And we want to make sure those are updated as new information becomes available, how they interface with each other, our boundary, and any adjustments. The drainage records database houses the drainage records of the district. That is a subscription service. Both require these updates and fixes to keep the tools functioning and current. It includes an assumed allotment of 100 hours in a step procedure, just like the other one, by which we ask Houston to take some action. That is staff discretionary undertaking. And these also were included in the 2023 approved budget under information management. That's Fund 35. And there is a proposed motion at the bottom of page 80.
Mr. Administrator, as in the last motion, am I to assume that the 16,000 and the 4,000 are additive?
That's correct.
Are there any other questions of the administrator? Hearing none, can we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve and authorize the administrator to sign the Houston Engineering Task Order 2023-01 GIS and ditch record maintenance drainage database annual subscription.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, passes 4-0.
I'm not opposed now to make sure.
I understood. Thank you.
I'm sorry, who made the second? I missed it.
Wagaman.
Wagaman.
I did.
Thank you.
Mr. Administrator, what's our next item?
Item 5, requiring action. This is the annual contracted services agreement. We have Tom Schmidt and Ashley Ritchie should be online to assist us through this. This is on page, excuse me, 87 of your packet. Ashley, are you?
Yes, can you guys hear me okay?
We can indeed, thank you.
All right. Good morning, Board of Managers. As Nick said, on page 87, you'll find the memo for the annual contracted services agreement. This is for both public drainage and district facilities. Excuse me. Attached as well to the memo on page 89 in the packet is a sample of the contracted services agreement. And so the district is responsible for inspection and maintenance of public drainage systems and district facilities. So annually, we're establishing contracted services agreements with several contractors. I've provided a list of these contractors and anticipate that additional contractors will also be added or utilized throughout the year under a similar form of agreement. I'll just note that this agreement will be or can be modified on the advice of legal counsel. We do update it every year. These contracted services agreement do not actually contain the scope of work in itself, but instead provide the framework that directs subsequent work orders. So in the past, these agreements have successfully been used as day labor contracts with various contractors, completing maintenance for both planned and unforeseen maintenance of drainage and facilities. This contract format has allowed for work to be quickly and efficiently signed off on by the administrator. And this authority was housed within that resolution 2009-04. So with the rescission of the 2009-04 resolution, it's uncertain whether the administrator can continue to approve these work orders. So we're asking for the board's concurrence on the contracted services agreement, and then as they may be modified by council, and then asking to further delegate the authority to issue individual work orders to the administrator up to $10,000 in accordance with both funds 80 and 95 budgets. I do believe that $10,000 limit is will be further discussed at the March workshop. So our goal here is transparency. We want to make sure the board understands the contracted services agreement, but we also want to be able to provide an efficient framework that allows staff to respond to the immediate needs that may arise. If there aren't any questions on page 88, we do have provided a proposed motion If the board is comfortable providing concurrence of the agreement, there is a proposed motion. Otherwise, if you would prefer to defer the discussion of the delegation of the authority for work order issuance to the March workshop, there's also an alternative motion for that.
Does anyone have any questions of Ms. Ritchie?
So, Mr. President, what's the cap on this? $10,000 a crack? How many times a year? What's the top? Just the
So the individual work orders, in similar accordance to the 2009 Just 04 resolution, is that $10,000 mark. Individual work orders are going to be, individual spot maintenance areas. If we do see that either planned work or unplanned work is going to start to go over that 10,000, we would have to come back to you guys as the board for approval.
And how many individual work orders are authorized under this during a year?
That's not a known number. We have a certain, set that we typically plan on doing that gets presented at our March workshop, which we've got already in the works for you guys. But there's also an unknown number of unforeseen things that pop up, whether that be beaver dams or obstructions from trees falling in or washouts on bank slopes. So under the current contracted services agreement, there is not a limit as to the number of work orders.
All right. And then the issue of expediency. Most of these items that you've named to me are not that expedient that they must be done immediately. It could be brought before the board for authorization. Is there a problem with that?
I would say in general, you're correct. There is a decent chunk of number of maintenance projects that are not time sensitive. However, there are time sensitive maintenance projects that pop up, and allowing for efficient access to getting that done is something we're asking for.
And how many of those are in a year did you find? In past experience?
Past experience, I'd have to take a look at numbers, but I mean, there's typically several.
So several is a definition of maybe 3 or 4?
I would say more than that typically.
More than that. And so the problem becomes because there aren't enough, or the timing in between the 2 board meetings? That's what correct? So, all right. That's really the problem. The issue is that the board has too few meetings, or at least untimely meetings. Yes.
I'm sure you're familiar with, yes.
Yeah.
And
All right.
as construction work goes,
Yep. I
particularly
understand.
sometimes those projects expand, and we don't know the site conditions or the level of maintenance necessarily until we get into a project. Construction can always change based on weather. And if we're at a point where the weather is right and the contractor is available, the ability to act on that is something that would be very beneficial to the systems.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Please.
just one follow-up comment on the question of the limit of spending under these task orders. The number of task orders is not known, but there is a budget line item for these activities. So the number of task orders and the spending under this authority, if it's delegated to the administrator, would not be able to exceed the approved budget without further board action.
So, Mr. President, thank you. Louis, that's correct. I agree with you about that. But I would also point out that when you change this, is a change from the budget becoming an item where it's an authority to spend. This makes the budget not just a planning document anymore, but now it's an authority to spend with an item like this. And that authority to spend is without necessarily the board authorizing it. And the second thing that's important about these coming before the board is that the board knows what's going on. It's an informational deal. In the past, you would never see this. You would not know that they're taking this out or doing that or what else is going on. It would just be signed and go by. So I think that's an important thing, is to keep the members of the board informed as to what the activities are in the district as they're going on. And as I see it,
Is that a question, John?
and no, that's a comment about that. And as I see it, the issue here is the schedule of the board meetings. And since the workshop meeting has become a meeting is a meeting, and that has evolved over time, maybe it'd be better to schedule that, say, on the third Wednesday. So we had board meetings, say, second, third, and fourth of the month. That way, giving the staff opportunity to present these items before, and we could do that. There's plenty of facilities that are in the northern part of the district that are available for that. That's just a suggestion here at this time, but that seems to be the real issue. The reason for the $10,000 is that they don't have time to come to the board. So the board should accommodate the staff.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I do have a question for the administrator. All of these, I think, would have been covered, wouldn't they, under our last agreement that we canceled at the last meeting?
Board of Managers, Manager Wegman, $10,000 to the administrator, $30,000 to the board president under 0904. So yes, these would have
I did want to
proceeded
ask
in
that
that way.
question. I have a comment, and I'll wait until we have the comment period.
And if there are no other questions, then I'll ask for a motion. Would you care to make a motion?
I guess, now I lost my dang page. Where the heck are we?
Page 88.
88?
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one we want to do. I mean, I think personally, I think it should go back to the workshop, because in my opinion, we should be doing what we canceled.
Then I will make a motion to concur in the attached contracted service agreement form for public drainage systems and district facility maintenance, subject to modification on advice of council, and to authorize the district administrator to execute individual work orders under these agreements in an amount not to exceed $10,000 per work order, and subject to the maintenance program budgets.
I'd second that.
All right, is there is there a discussion?
Mr. President, I'll be voting no against this today. Again, this concept here is something that allows the transformation of the budget from a planning document to an authority to spend document. And this does not have any top on it as to how many times this can be done, except for the budget itself. So therefore, you don't really have necessarily a good control on it as to what goes on. And third, when these come before the board, you find the information of what's happening in the district at the time. That's an important thing that most board members don't see here. And so that's an important issue. And finally, the issue that seems to me is that the board's schedule for meetings doesn't provide the staff with the flexibility they need. And therefore, the workshop meeting could become a regular board meeting and conducted under regular order of business on, say, an alternative week, say the third Wednesday, for just suggestion periods for purposes here. So that's my position. Thank you.
Any other further?
Yes, I believe that it was completely ordinary and customary in the business world to do exactly what we did with the last one that was canceled at the last board meeting. I think any business would operate like that. And to have our people have to come before us and spend all their time preparing for all of these meetings and to sit and come to all of these meetings to tell us stuff that should be ordinary and customary under any common business structure, I think is ridiculous, and I would hope we fix it at the board workshop.
So, thank you for that. My comments are that this is precisely what we've wanted staff to do. We want staff to respond quickly and efficiently to maintain drainage in our district, and that we are hampering that opportunity by not giving them that authority. So I will be voting in favor of this. Any further comments?
Call the question.
All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I am opposed.
All right, it passes 3-1.
Nate.
Mr. Administrator.
Yes, Board of Managers, President Bradley, next item on the agenda is construction materials purchase for Judicial Ditch 2. Ashley will join us again for that item.
Yep, thank you, Nick. So on page 93 and 94 of the packet are the memo and the associated invoice. This, as Nick stated, this is for the purchase of construction materials along Judicial Ditch 2 in Hugo. So as part of inspection and maintenance of the public drainage systems, occasionally the district does install crossings to allow for efficient access. When the district installs these crossings, it's our responsibility to maintain them. During a routine inspection of JD2 near branch 4, the existing 60-inch culvert pipe was identified as needing repair. And so, in going to seek the procurement of a 60-inch pipe, we were able to locate one for its replacement. The cost of this pipe is $13,000. So staff are recommending that the board approve payment in the amount of $13,000 in accordance with the attached invoice.
Mr. Chair, I recommend that $13,000.
Are there any questions?
So used to following regular order, this is
No.
I think
confused you.
this is useful.
Yes.
So, all right, hearing no questions, can I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I recommend that $13,000 be issued to Marvin and Judy
LaValle
in accordance with the attached invoice 644551.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any discussion? I'm sorry, my fault. My own. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Mr. President, thank you very much, Ashley, for taking care of this matter. Eventually, it's been about, things do take time to get done. I think it's been 5 months just from the time I brought this up, and it's been a couple years at least since that pipe was removed from LaValle's property. So it got lost because of the COVID business and other issues. And thank you, Mr. Administrator, for getting it squared away. Well, it's very nice.
So, Mr. Administrator, next item.
Next item on the agenda is item 7 for action. This is a check register dated February 22nd, 2023, in the amount of $218,731.04 as prepared by your accountant, Redpath and Company. I will make note that the packet materials or an email was sent to the managers regarding the credit card. You had asked for a one-time identification of how the card was used. And I just make that point because it is within the check register. Those materials are typically reviewed by the treasurer, past and our present here, and certainly they're able to ask for invoices and such to review those materials. So,
Are there any questions? Hearing none, can we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move to approve the check register dated February 22nd, 2023, in the amount of $218,731.04, prepared by Redpath and Company.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
Any discussion?
Mr. President, Mr. Administrator, thank you for sending us the credit card. It's much more detailed than what we receive in anything else without having to ask for all the invoices. It's a curious thing to what you could read and learn here. Screws for license plates not to be stolen. That's a curious thing. What was another one here that was off the storage is being paid for the Moby Track, and realizing that the Moby Track is being stored underneath the office also, and the Moby Track hasn't been sold yet. It's one of the informational issues that have come from this that I wouldn't have thought about. That the Moby Track hasn't been really a great success. I think that's an item we need to talk about, and maybe get our good friends at the Department of Natural Resources to reimburse whatever cash we put into that, and free up the space there. But that's the kind of information you get from this that we wouldn't get from the regular check register, because the check register is just a total amount to a particular area. It doesn't break it down and give you an idea of what's going on.
So I was not aware that the Moby Track was for sale, is it?
Well,
It is not.
I thought we had made some discussion about maybe getting forward with that.
I don't recall any discussion of that.
Well,
maybe we should. But
yes, that's what I'm saying, is that that's the kind of information you get from these detailed reports that you don't get when you just the check register. So that's very good.
Mr. Administrator?
Board of Managers, I just note that the Moby Track is in the garage. The trailer, which has is very long and has a long tongue on it, was moved to a storage site to allow more vehicles in the garage. That has to do with the vandalism and theft that we've had in the past in the parking lot. So just a management of our items. Also, there's a canoe and the boat are off-site as well. So a little cramped for safe space.
Mr. President, so if the Moby Track went to a new owner, we'd have some space there, eh? In the garage.
Yeah.
Because, my point is you're paying for the space in the garage too, so. But anyways, that's, it was good to see those things. I'm not complaining about the spending. I'm just pointing out that there's an item there that is really needs to be dealt with. So.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, passes 4-0. Mr. Administrator, next.
Yes, President Bradley, Board of Managers, next on the agenda is for discussion and information is Houston's annual public drainage system prioritization presentation. Typically, we have this on the March workshop. It is the initial step in looking at our capital improvement or repair items. It helps to inform our budget. This will be given by Chris, and I also believe Adam Ness will participate from Houston Engineering. He is the public drainage engineer, if you will, replacing Garrett Munson previously. Adam's not new to the drainage world, though. He's worked on several Rice Creek projects in the past and knows drainage quite well. Yes, so I think Chris is ready here.
Mr. Adonis.
Mr. President, members of the board. So this is the annual presentation we typically would be providing at the March workshop, and due to the amount of items on that March workshop, we decided to move it to today with the additional time we have here. Really what we're talking about in this presentation is the major repairs that have been scheduled to be completed along Rice Creek's public drainage systems. I'll get into this in a bit, but you may recall that we view the major repairs that are completed along the drainage systems a little differently than kind of the day-to-day maintenance efforts that we have. Among many things, one of the reasons being that these are a much larger scale and effort, and so we can refer to these as capital improvement projects with relation to the district's budgeting. And so again, I'm going to give you an update here along with Adam Neese regarding what we are currently working on to date with these capital projects, what's scheduled into the future, and to get confirmation ultimately from the board that the schedule that we have prepared that guides the annual budgets that will be prepared, that it fits within those timeframes and a prioritization that the board has. So one of the things I passed out here before the meeting was this public drainage system maintenance repair flow chart. This is a document that we've utilized since, I believe, 2015. That guides the decision-making process on how to respond to a complaint or other drainage system inquiry from the public. And one of the main tenets of this flow chart is that distinction that I mentioned earlier between major repairs and minor maintenance. And the minor maintenance has a different track on it for how the work is being completed, who initiates and guides the work from the district perspective, and how that work is even paid for. And again, just wanted to note that this flow chart is one of the key components in how we deal with and address these complaints and prioritizing issues. So I'll give a little summary here on the difference between that minor maintenance that we have identified and major repair. Very important to note that these aren't statutory differences. In the statute under 103E, maintenance and repair are essentially the same thing. They have no different definition to them. But for Rice Creek's purposes, we've identified these as different types of work, again, so that we can manage these in a way that guides the payment of these or the funding of these efforts and of how they're completed by either district staff or by the district engineer. So very briefly here regarding the scope of these projects, those maintenance efforts, minor maintenance, they're typically limited in scope. They're not system-wide on a drainage system. Conversely, with what we consider to be a major repair, we're essentially repairing or reconstructing an entire branch or entire system in one project. We've done some of these through a whole system, like we've done for Anoka County Ditch 31. In some cases, we've done branch by branch, which we're doing now with Anoka County Ditch 5362. But in either case, we're essentially doing the reconstruction of that entire system. With regard to regulatory engagement, the minor maintenance efforts typically require minimal regulatory engagement, either with the Wetland Conservation Act or the DNR. There's going to be some exceptions to that. In some cases, we might have to address something with regard to the Wetland Conservation Act or even with regard to public waters on a minor maintenance item. But again, typically that engagement is less than what we'd see on a major repair, where we might have 2 or 3 public waters along a drainage system, or we might have extensive potential for impacts that we need to address under the Wetland Conservation Act. Typically, when we do those major repairs, we have that repair report that identifies that regulatory engagement and how we are addressing our repairs within the rules. Another item is with regard to who manages these efforts. Minor maintenance is led primarily by district staff. They prepare the proposed maintenance efforts. They work with the contractors to complete them. They do the inspection on them in order to have those efforts completed. On those major repairs, those have been typically managed by the district engineer. We've done the repair reports to identify what needs to be repaired. We've prepared the plans and specifications and have led the construction management and contracting on behalf of the district for those efforts. Definitely a different means with which to contract that work also between the minor maintenance and repair. For that minor maintenance, typically they're those day labor contracts, just as we were talking about a couple items ago on the agenda here today. For those major repairs, those are typically under a public bid process. Much more extensive, requires a more extensive specification package to do that. And we do that very often because the law requires it. Once we get above a certain threshold, and I think right now it's typically $175,000 at that limit, then it's required under the statute to complete that public bid process for an effort like that. And then finally, and I highlighted this item here on this page, the difference in how these efforts are paid for is critical. And this is something that's laid out in the watershed management plan for the district. We identified that minor maintenance efforts are paid for via solely by ad valorem funds, whereas the watershed plan identifies for repairs that they would be paid for by a collection of both water management district charges and ad valorem, and we have guidance provided in the watershed plan specific to each water management district, how that split is going to be paid for between the landowners draining into the system and the watershed district as a whole. One thing that we frequently remind the board of, and you've seen this slide very frequently every time we have a repair project, we follow this four-step process in the repairs. And one of the first ones is the records, getting the as constructed, subsequently improved condition determined. That's through our historic review that ultimately leads to a hearing that we have for the reestablishment of records. And again, we've completed that on every one of the drainage systems in the district, with the exception of one of them, which I'll mention a little bit. Following getting those records in order, then we have kind of a hard stop where we decide when are we going to be moving forward with that substantial repair if that is required on the drainage system. We don't want to move forward with developing a repair report and plans if we're not ready to have that item budgeted. So that's one of the key reasons that we need to get ahead of this and do this task each year of looking at prioritization so we can identify that step process of doing that repair report, then the next year completing the construction plans and permitting, and then the following year doing the construction. And that process, again, typically on order of about 2 to 3 years, we want to get ahead of it early on. Some of the considerations that the board may have and that staff have as we're recommending this prioritization to you, and this has been the same that we've done for many years now. We review how degraded is the system, how much of a urgency or effort is it on a particular system given the condition that it's in. The second item is, are there other damages that could be associated with the waiting? Is there some sort of imminent flooding that can occur with the relationship to that degraded condition if we don't act right away? And then the third item is that, are there any other activities that may affect project scheduling? And this came into play when we were scheduling the County Ditch 5362 repairs that we're completing right now. We did actually push that one back a year at the request of City of Circle Pines so that we could have that coordinated in conjunction with other activities that were occurring of city roadway projects in that area. So very important to consider these each time, and it is important to also note that there are technical inputs related to these decisions and stakeholder input that may affect the board's decision on these prioritizations. And I'll just recap quickly where we're at last year. Again, we do this every year. And last year we prioritized work beginning in 2022 with that County Ditch 5362 main trunk project, which is now carried into 2023. And then moving on forward from there in 2023 with construction of JD3 branches 1, 2, and 4. And then you can see the rest of these moving on here from there: Ramsey County Ditch 4, The remaining 2 branches on ACD 5362, working on JD3 west of I-35E, Anoka Ramsey JD1, branches 1, 2, and 3. And then finally, Ramsey Washington JD1 cleanout would be the last one that we had in last year's prioritization for 2028/29. Then one more thing I'll point out before we get into each individual effort is that we have this table that we've also provided to you today that identifies the status of each one of these drainage systems and branches of the drainage system with regard to activities that have been completed. And a lot of these activities are related to that 4-step process identified earlier with regard to establishing that as constructed condition, completing repair report, construction of the repair, and then ongoing maintenance. This is a table that we've had in the works for, I would guess, almost 10 years now. We update it annually every year, and it provides some indication of the progress the district has made on each one of these drainage systems. And certainly important to note that 14 years ago, when the district started engaging more heavily on the drainage system repair, this chart would have looked a lot different. You would have seen very little green of things that have been completed, and actually a lot of white space where he hadn't even contemplated when repairs had been occurring. So the district has made tremendous progress in these last 14 to 15 years. And with that, I'll turn it over to Adam Neese. Again, he's the person that's been working now on public drainage systems with Rice Creek regularly. He's going to be leading that effort on Judicial Ditch 3 construction plans that we're working on right now. And he'll start walking you through each one of these individual projects that we're working on here. So take it away, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Hopefully you guys can hear me all right.
Loud and clear.
Very, very good. Yeah, I'm at home today with the kids with the school closing, so I look forward to meeting you in person in the future. But yeah, we got a kind of, as Chris was mentioning, kind of the high level overview, and if we just dive into a few more of the details on each one of those projects that's ongoing currently, to review what we've accomplished this year and last year, and then look ahead into the future a little bit. So Anoka County Ditch 5362, specifically the main trunk. We've got a little graphic there on the right. You'll kind of see this similar graphic throughout some of these slides, indicating where the ditch is relative to some landmarks. So hopefully we can orient ourselves a little bit. So for this, we have construction ongoing currently, and we are looking to get the contract completion in June of this year. So that's going fairly well. It has had its challenges. If we go to the next slide, we just have a couple quick images of the construction that's been ongoing. We didn't quite get the freeze up conditions that we were hoping for this year with the weather, but they're pushing forward nonetheless. Next slide is on to JD3. Now this one has had quite a history here of projects that have been ongoing. So back to 2020, we accomplished the main trunk and the branch 3 repair. So those in the graphic are shown in red. And there was ditch cleaning and culvert repair that was completed at that time for those 2 segments. For 2023, that we are working on currently is the repair of branches 1, 2, and 4. So in the graphic there, you'll see those shown in green. So that's, again, in process of the repair report. We're developing plan and profile sets and specifications and getting a bid package prepared this spring here. And that will be for construction later this year. Now, we are looking for DNR engagement for public waters. So that has been started as part of early coordination, and we're kind of working through that. We have not had any problems with that so far, so that's going smoothly. And then looking ahead to probably 2026 or 27, we'll finish up with the main trunk west of I-35E. So we'll be doing some early investigation of channel stabilization this year and next, using the watershed-based implementation funds, and that's into the future. So we'll see that kind of come up again in a few slides as we look to the future. So that's kind of what's, well, I guess I'll go into a little bit more detail here. So again, with JD3, I've covered these branch 1, 2, and 4 already a little bit, but just to give us a little bit deeper history. So in 2019, there was a repair report completed. There was an addendum to that repair report in August of last year. And then you as the board ordered the repair in October of last year. And then again, we are in that bid plan development, bid package, specification, contract, plan and profile and all that, and then construction anticipated later this year into next.
And I'll just note that, we're planning to, as we've done in the past, provide some flexibility for the contractor in the scheduling of the work completed. I think No County Ditch 5362 is a good example this year of the importance of providing that flexibility. It does provide oftentimes a lower cost when you provide that opportunity rather than confine the contractors to a much narrower construction window. It is helpful also so that if the contractor does encounter adverse conditions, which we've again found this year with the freeze-thaw cycles and excess snowfall that have caused the freeze up to be less in the ground than what was anticipated, it does again allow that work to go a little longer than what we anticipated, and that we're not having the contractor running up against the contract window. So again, we would recommend having that flexibility for this JD3 project as well.
Thanks, Chris. And so, yeah, that's kind of recap of what's ongoing. And then as we look ahead to the long-term repair planning, this is almost a duplicate of the slide that Chris showed earlier from the recap of last year. So it's a very similar list of projects. But again, JD3, branches 1, 2, and 4 is ongoing, 2023. And then RCD4 will be coming up next year. We are working on the repair report for that currently. And then Anoka County Ditch 5362, branches 5 and 6 in 2025 and 26. And then I think the rest of the list is duplicate, so we could probably just skip those. We've already seen those.
I can't read it.
And okay, so now again looking to the future for our prioritized projects for Ramsey County Ditch 4. There is a little history with this one as well. So in 2021, there's a repair completed by the city, and then it's kind of, I guess on the graphic shown in red there. So that carried
could you
into.
Just point where we're at? It's hard to see. Arden Hills
Okay.
And
Yeah. So,
just remind me where this one's at.
Sure. So yeah, Ramsey County Ditch 4. This is the one where we had that ditch that was replaced by a pipe.
Oh,
This
okay.
is the one that flows north into Lake Johanna.
Thank you. Okay, so gotcha.
Yep. And so yeah, the red dashed line is that area where the ditch was replaced by the pipe, where the city led the construction of it with the funding by the district through.
And now we're talking about by Northwestern College.
Correct.
And
Yep,
the
that would be
pond.
that next
Yep.
phase that we show here on
Okay.
the blue dash
I'm still
line
a
there.
little
Yep.
sleepy. That's how that works. Got it. Thank you.
Yep, exactly. Yep, thank you for that. And yeah, so the blue dashed line from Oasis Pond to Little Lake Johanna. Again, we're working on the repair report currently and looking forward to a next year and into 2025 repair construction season. So um, there are remaining repairs that are needed downstream of Oasis Pond, and what we're finding is that there's excessive shading from the tree canopy. So what that does is that it prevents the growth of vegetation along the banks, and that can lead to general instability of the banks and sloughing in, and just general conditions of the ditch kind of getting compromised. There's some sections with steep grade. There are pretty great access challenges for maintenance, just getting in there due to, again, the amount of vegetation and tree coverage. It's pretty challenging. And then we did do a partial survey of this back in the fall to try and determine how much sediment there was in the channel, and we were actually surprised to find there was not much sediment clogging up the channel. It's showing up as fairly close to the as constructed profile of the ditch. So that was good, but we want to get in there and remove some areas of trees right next to the ditch and allow some sunlight to get in and help some vegetation get established along those banks. If we go to the next slide, we just have a couple of quick shots, quick pictures of the conditions of our CD4. And so you can see it's quite shady, which, you know, is nice and pretty, but it doesn't lend itself very well to growth of vegetation along the ditches and stability of them.
And this is that channel you may recall that we've talked about. It has the concrete gully on it where they've taken riprap and then put concrete around it. And we were surprised when we went and walked through here how stable that actually is. It is not in bad condition in general. There might be a few areas that might need to be touched up a little bit, but most of that isn't too bad. It's, again, very much a tree canopy access issue that we're looking at. And so we should be moving forward here in the not too distant future here with the completion of a repair report, and we'll cover that with you at a future workshop here, I would guess sometime this spring, and then that can be, again, moving forward to development construction plans later on into the year.
Excellent. So again, looking forward to prioritize projects, Anoka County Ditch 5362, main trunk. Looking to the blue dashed line over on the graphic for 2025 and 26 repairs.
Yeah, and I'll just jump
Chris,
in here.
yeah, go ahead, Chris. Yeah, I was going to ask you to jump in.
Yeah. So
this
again, this is, you know, really right across from the freeway from the district office. That blue line, the branch 5, that's the one that goes through past Trost Metro Gun Club, going down to the south. The red line is the branch 6, which is that area next to where the park and ride is. Just on the west side of the freeway. So that's really the outlet for those properties along Naples Street and the park and ride. And, you know, as we have on the slider, it is a municipal outlet. This isn't rural area. So what we found on this area is that in reviewing the wetland layers that we have, is that there's likely going to be substantial impacts that would need to be addressed from those repairs, particularly on branch 5. That's why I think I've shared with you before, you know, our projection for the Browns Preserve Wetland Bank, and where we would likely be needing to use credits, and this project here would be one of them that would probably need a larger amount of wetland credits than some of our other repairs, again, due to those numbers of wetlands that are along this drainage system. Again, we won't know the full answer of that until we do complete a repair report on this area, but
There's a button.
that would be our intent would be is to complete a repair report coming up in the coming year on this, again, getting in that 3-year schedule where we can be looking at potentially preparing plans and specs next year on this one.
Steve, there's a button on your monitor that you can turn on to see better.
What is it?
Was it this one?
Yeah, it's like the second button in. There we go.
Oh.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was looking at the big one.
Yeah, it's hard to see.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Chris. Next on our list is prioritized projects, Anoka Ramsey JD1. And this is again into the future of 2027 and 28 repair. We know that there will be some culvert replacement and some tree removal. And we've kind of highlighted in the graphic locations of those culvert replacements. And there's a known little curveball that we have with this project. In the first image, you can see the blue dashed line actually goes underneath the warehouse. And so we're kind of already starting to brainstorm creative solutions to that, possibly realigning a portion of the ditch to allow us to get around that warehouse. So that'll be kind of interesting how we proceed on that one.
Yeah, again, this is that area that is on either side of 35W, kind of on the boundary between Blaine and Mounds View. And the work that we'd be looking at doing is primarily on branches 1, 2, and 3 of the system. We don't have them marked real clearly on this graphic, but we have done some efforts in the past on this drainage system already that have been more in that minor maintenance category. One of these would be that branch 5, which goes by the Mounds View City Park, and Manager Wynant knows the location very well. That I can't recall the name of that park offhand.
Silver Lake, yeah.
Okay.
It's a major park, yeah.
Yeah.
Silver Lake Park. No, that's not it.
No, it's in Fridley.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So again, this one is a little further out, but and a little time to noodle on how we might address some of these issues.
President Bradley?
Yes, sir.
If I could, Chris, at this location, this is the site where we had an extensive discussion off to the west in regarding putting the drainage system into a large pipe that became the responsibility of the landowner and recorded on the property. And here, for the building that's shown there, the warehouse, we didn't find that in the record, et cetera, so that maintenance could continue there, and that's the reason for the reroute idea? Is that?
Yeah, that would definitely be one of the primary reasons. We don't know what the condition of the pipe is under the building there. I think one aspect that we would want to do is to do some televising of that pipe to see what condition it is in. And even if it is in good condition, we still might consider trying to do that realignment just so that if there is a catastrophic failure that were to occur, that we'd have some ability to address it. So.
And we've talked about this one for a number of years, correct?
Yes.
I mean, we've
Yep.
had plans, yeah.
Yeah.
It's been on our radar. Yeah.
Typically, because if I could, Mr. President, because we don't have the equipment, all that would be outsourced to do the televising and that sort of thing. We do have some equipment, but not of that length.
Yeah.
And for the cleaning, jetting.
Very good. Thanks, Nick. So then, yeah, moving on to Ramsey Washington JD1. We did do a records reestablishment in 2021, and that sets us up for looking on into the future then, and looking into 2028 and 29 for doing a repair. This would be a system-wide repair, and that was again part of that historic review and records reestablishment. And then this again is part of the watershed-based implementation funding, where we apply for that for the Highway 61 pond augmentation. So I don't know if Chris, if you can put a little more context to that, if you want to.
Sure.
There.
Yeah, that Highway 61 pond is considered to be a district facility, and it is in line with the public drainage system. And so that's one area that district staff identified as being a potential area where augmentation of the pond could potentially improve its ability to trap sediment, trap nutrients, and do a little better job than what it is doing right now. So that was the rationale behind applying for those watershed-based implementation funds, or submitting that. And so that again would be something that would be moving forward with this year, that you would be seeing something coming from staff to initiate that work. And another thing I'll note is that this one is not shown in the watershed plan as being a capital project area. We don't have a water management district for this particular area. So sometime before the implementation of this repair would begin to occur, we'd want to go back to the watershed plan and add this in there. It would require an amendment to the watershed plan to do that. But again, we have time for that. This one is a few years down the road yet. And then, the last thing here, those same questions that I asked earlier on. Are there any of these that you would rate as a higher priority than what we have here, or do you like to see switched? And if you want, I can go back to an earlier slide looking at that order, if that would be helpful. I guess this would be the time that if the board has any input on that, we'd appreciate knowing any of your guidance with regard to this prioritization.
Chris, why don't you put that slide up for us? Does anyone have any comments on this question? Have we got the right order of presentation?
Mr. Chair, right order seems good to me. This Ramsey County Ditch 4 approached that stream bank stabilization very carefully. We could have further discussion later, but as you said, if the concrete that was put in is doing the trick and there's not as much sediment as you anticipated, as limited disturbance to the land, of course, you'll take care in doing that. Sometimes that said, the park in Mounds View is Silverview Park.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and that'll be another huge one to be dealing with. And then I do have a question I've been meaning to get to since we started here. Why is Washington County Judicial Ditch, whatever 2, 3, 1, why isn't it, what's the other county that's involved in that judicial ditch? Because it just seems like it's an odd naming of it.
Yeah, Mr. President, Manager Wynett, it all has to do with how the project was originally initiated and established. So not all judicial ditches are multi-county. There are a few of the judicial ditches that were established through a court proceedings rather than going through the, whatever the equivalent of 103E was at the time back, in 1890 or whatever. So and there's a number of these in Washington County. We have Washington County 5, 6, and 7 are all within just Washington County, but they were established under a judicial order rather than going through the county hearing process. I have no idea why they elected to do it that way, but yeah, that appears to be what the preferred method was in that area of Washington County back then.
Interesting. I've been doing ditch 103 ABCD for 30 years and I've never seen this. So every time it comes up, Mr. Chair, it's like, wait, why is that? Okay, that's.
And
very
Mr.
interesting.
Chair Manager, Wayne, I'll just address your other comment regarding Ramsey County Ditch 4. Important thing to note is that that system also is steeper than most of the other systems in Rice Creek. So there gets to be a fair amount of velocity, which is why they did the, concrete riprap channel along there. Along with that velocity means that it's kind of self-cleaning. So when you do get sediment coming down in there, it just washes down into Little Johanna Lake, which for the ditch may be good, maybe not so good for Little Johanna Lake. Which is why even with the amount of erosion that is occurring along the banks, you aren't seeing it in the ditch bottom. It isn't that the banks are stable. They're not. And you could kind of see that in some of those photos, how brown they were underneath the tree canopy there. But that sediment that does get in the ditch just tends to wash down.
Board of Managers, I'll just note the inclusion of the watershed-based funding for our Highway 61 ponds, and then the stream condition downstream of JD3 there before it enters the lake, and that it's good that we're planning ahead and looking at solutions in those areas in conjunction with our ditch projects.
Nick, I just note that with the JD1, cleaning the ditch and the ponds may have different financial responsibilities. The ponds exist there to protect the downstream bald eagle. Cleaning the ditch relates to drainage, so we'll want to keep our eye on that distinction, I think, as we go forward.
Yes, good point.
Other questions?
Mr. President, so Chris, go back to the very beginning of your talk today. Would it be proper to define minor and major maintenance as petitioned and non-petitioned maintenance? Major maintenance being petitioned maintenance, and minor being non-petitioned?
Manager Waller, under the statute, they do have separate proceedings for petition, non-petition, but generally the work that the district has done has not been petitioned. The district has done its work as essentially a non-petition effort, and I would have to defer to one of your attorneys to explain all of the intricacies with which how you manage the drainage systems, because it includes 103B, D, and E, and it gives you alternative authorities. But yeah, I would say that all of the work that district has done to date has been non-petition, but we've identified these two different categories, really, again, for the purposes of identifying how we're going to implement these projects. Again, how we implement it is not necessarily guided on strictly under 103E. We create this distinction under your watershed plan for how we deal with these.
Mr. President.
Certainly.
So the plan contains a number of areas in which special taxing districts were created. Were not those special taxing districts created by petition of the board?
I guess I don't believe so. I think to know for certain, I'd have to defer again to John Kolb on that, but I don't believe that those were done under a petition.
A petition by the Board of Managers.
I think they were done under a board action, but a board order, but not necessarily under a petition.
I disagree with you. I believe that the board petitioned ourselves in order to do these things. That's how we got started. That was the essence of the Hugo court case, was that that the administrative remedies hadn't been exhausted because the board had the ability to petition themselves in order to do repair. And so, as I understand, every one of these districts, or many of these, that by petition of the Board of Managers itself, petitioning for the repair.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, well, that's just my understanding, and we can let somebody sort it out later.
Yeah, and I could certainly be incorrect on that. And again, that would be a good question for Mr. Kolb.
Are there other questions? Chris, have you completed, or is there more you want to tell us?
That's the whole presentation.
All right, I want to thank both of you and Adam. Excellent. This chart is a wonderful tool, and thank you again. Are there other comments?
President Bradley, just to confirm, board has consensus with the hierarchy that Houston has laid out. It'd be good to have that in the record.
Certainly. Let me ask, I asked if anyone had a suggested change. I heard none, but
Yep.
can we assume from that, everyone, that we have consensus on how to proceed? John?
Yes, I don't have any objection to taking action here in the discussion period.
All right.
However, the most efficient
All right.
way to do it.
The four of us say proceed, please.
Thank you.
So with that, I guess we move on to the next item. Adam, wonderful having you. We look forward to seeing you in person. I understand you've worked with us before, but welcome aboard anyway.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Mr. Administrator.
Yes, President Bradley, next item is the staff reports that are in your packet.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions, but I love the reports. It's my way of finding out what's shaking in the district. And when I have individual questions or some clarification or from some additional information, I know where to find it.
Thank you for that.
All right. So next item, the March calendar. So I'll remind you that we have a workshop coming up at which we are going to, among other things, discuss the bylaws. And we previously received from Nick in an email a copy of the bylaws. Anyone who proposes would like to see a change to any of those should come prepared to provide that information at the upcoming workshop. So if no other comments, then administrator's update.
Yes, thank you, President Bradley. Board of Managers, couple items here. I did attend Minnesota Watershed District's legislative session, MOD legislative session. They approved their bylaws change and name change. They had a good number of updates from the various agencies. Of note to me was Minnesota DNR and the flood hazard mitigation. They were asking for and are believing they're up for $24 million slated for that program, which is good. If it does indeed come through, DNR made note that it will fund 11 projects, 10 projects that are already underway. And so to me, that means Rice Creek, you're not so high on the list yet to receive that funding, and you'll recall how much the large discrepancy between asks and the funding available. So with that, that program does require a 50% local match. So even at our project of $22 million, we had to have to come up with 11 million ourselves. We will keep saving to make sure we're ready as we look for avenues there. The district office, we are looking at additional office cubicles. This was something I brought up when we talked about the organizational chart and the number of staff. We're waiting on an updated general layout. I did budget in the current year and previously in 2022 for this. So we'll see what those numbers are. Staff have scheduled the city-county partner meeting, April 12th. That will be at the New Brighton Community Center at 1 p.m. That is intended to be in person. We want to give that a try again now that COVID's over. So again, that's April 12th, New Brighton Community Center, 1 to 3 p.m. And with that, just President Bradley, I'll make response to maybe a couple of things that were brought up during the meeting, just for clarity. The district's meeting is a meeting, and so you are able to take action, whether it's a workshop or not. My feeling is that the level of effort between workshop and board meeting is one to recognize. I would like to certainly review that further with staff. I think there is a level of effort to that, which immediately I'm not so certain would be the best for staff. If we need to tone down the workshop items or what have you and shy away from action, we can do that. I think that ties into the outcome of the recession of 09, 04 and those types of things. I want to be transparent that I do have requests for actions with our consultants. I presume you know this, that at any time I may pick up the phone, talk about the drainage work group, ACD 102232, the settlements, 0904 and these types of things. And so it's my understanding of my position is that I use my good judgment, or what I hope you'll find to be good judgment, to engage our consultants and move through the work with some discretion and so on. So I make note of that. I do work to inform you. That is during the administrator updates. As Manager Wyman noted, we use our staff reports to communicate with the board the goings on and the items that they're undertaking as well. And then also, in regards to the Moby track, I'd agree, we certainly had a pause in its use. There are potential locations that we could use it. We've discussed this with the team. The pause, medical leave, COVID, these types of things influenced its use or had an impact on its use. We're hoping to have Mitch see his get on it and see to use it. But I don't disagree that an additional discussion or moving on, is its maintenance, storage, and use valuable to the district. So that's all I have for you.
Any questions, Nick? Moby track in running order, or does it need a repair?
It's in running order.
Okay. So, John, your update, any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I attended the Minnesota Watersheds Conference. It was delegated by the board and voted for the name change and whatever. It took all of about 10 minutes, the whole meeting portion of that. I also attended the executive session earlier in the day, which there was nothing noted that caught my attention except that they missed Miss Wyant. They wanted her report. We did have reports from the Department of Natural Resources and from the Board of Soil and Water Resources, and there were a couple of things that were important to note there. One is the Stormwater Mitigation Fund seemed to only have about $10 million left in it after it was done for the entire state. Most of it was pretty well parceled out to the Red River Valley. I don't think $10 million is enough for what we're looking for. The DNR, their report that caught my attention there was that there's going to be additional regulation of stormwater ponds that are collected for irrigation. So they're going to regulate not only groundwater for irrigation, but now they want to start to regulate surface water collection for irrigation. The reason for that was given because of the talk about the impact on stormwater into the groundwater, et cetera, whatever. And as the gentleman left the room, I took his card and gave it to Nick, I believe, and mentioned that at Rice Creek, we've done this extensively. Well, he assured me, of course, there's plenty of water over here. We don't have to worry. I hope he tells the people in White Bear Lake or other parts of the district where we've had some well issues. So that was new to me at that time. I attended the next day. I went to listen to the SALT presentation in the committee. Also, Jasky was there with his budget presentation, you know, and there were no changes from what he had told us the day before. So we're not really in, as Nick said, we're not in line for any dollars there. There just isn't any yet. But I would mention that in that case of that issue, that Senator Marty happens to be in our district. The 235 project happens to be in his district. He happens to be the chairman of the finance committee. He happens to hold that committee meeting 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so, Mr. President and Madam Treasurer, I would ask that you too use your skills to have a chat with Senator Marty, please. And also the other senator, which names escapes me at the moment, I apologize. Not remembering the lady's name, but she's right on the other side of it, so there's two involved. In fact, Mr. President, I'll give you, this is Senator Marty's LA contact information.
Okay,
for you.
thank you.
So you can arrange and talk to him. I'm certain you'll be able to. You know, we did have some support for this almost 5 years ago now, with Senator Uyghur and Representative Fisher at the time. So we need a new champion because Senator Uyghur's retired. Anyways, the SALT project went flying through like it always has. There isn't any problem. The issue with the SALT project, why it is, over the word gross, I assume that's GROSS. Liability is this adjective in front of it. And it seems the SALT applicators want to be relieved of any responsibility ever in the world, which the rest of the business community is not happy about hearing. That seems to be the issue. There wasn't an issue between the environmental groups and the business groups. They've solved their problem in their language or whatever it is. But that word was the problem, and the Judiciary Committee is apparently where this is the hang up at it. About the, I want to mention here about the presentation we had at the workshop earlier this month from the Stormwater Group. Mr. President, I know you're enthusiastic about that. I could tell that from Hawaii. The sunshine and warm weather was certainly helping your enthusiasm for handing them a check. Not so fast is my reply. And here's why. The Stormwater Group, Research Progress Group, is kind of an academic organization. Whereas here in the district, we're a laboratory where we do experimentation and we've had success. And our cities have been our laboratories and working with them to create these programs and how they're done. So when you hear them, when I listen to that fellow, and I've listened to the gentleman before a few times in my career here in the Watershed, I came to realization that we've done these programs before. We've moved beyond where he is touting them at this time, and our money would be better spent, for example, in the next section of the stormwater reuse program or irrigation to determine by looking at, say, rainfall for the last 20 years on a daily chart to see how much there is and if the ponds need to be redesigned and how that system could be perfected more. That's kind of where one area that I know is of interest, and particularly in Hugo, where we're doing that, especially now that the DNR is going to start to measure, how much water you're taking out of the system, et cetera. So that was important here. And let's see, as I've written some other notes here. My fancy blue folder from the from attending there. There's the DNR, and we talked about the flood hazardation. It was interesting to hear the language about the drainage registry. There was discussion of that by Mr. Jaski. At the time of the meeting in the afternoon, the language had not been presented from the retractor's office, that 6th floor of magical linguistic experts that transfer your ideas into actual language that's used as statute. And apparently that drainage registry proposal had been up there for well over a month and it hadn't come down. At the time, the watersheds at that meeting were opposed to any change, any language at all. It seemed very clear to me that they were unhappy. The valley, which is very unhappy about the whole process, that it hadn't gone properly through the drainage work group, that at the work group there had been some very, very adversarial, hard positions taken, and they felt this wasn't ready for prime time yet. But somewhere in that afternoon, the language came out of the office, and it had a change. As it was described earlier in the afternoon, the environmental groups wanted any new ditch, any improvement on a ditch, any petitioned maintenance on a ditch, any non-petitioned maintenance on a ditch. I believe that's correct. And I had read the reply the district had made from Mr. Schmidt and an engineer, Otterness, and very good, by the way, gentlemen. I thought you were right on. Your ideas seem to have been incorporated into the Minnesota Watershed's reply. Okay. As the language came out, I believe they've cut out the maintenance issue, the repair issue. But I don't find that having a statewide registry, we don't have one for potholes. I'm looking forward to it, that the counties and the cities and the highway department all sit down and talk about your potholes and they'd be registered. This has really gotten to the point where some of these organizations of non-government organizations are not so much helpful as a hindrance to providing the services of stormwater conveyance and such. And so I think that the drainage, the watersheds, I don't know what their official position is because I said this language came out afterwards, but at the time of the meeting, there was a definite no about any kind of registry, electronics or such. So I don't know what's going to happen there. Other than that, I guess I just make sure that to let you know that was Mr. Jaski's budget went through in the Senate hearing I was at without any questions. The salt business went through and it was referred to the Judiciary Committee where you'll see the argument about it. The fact that a lack of funding that was available for any of our projects, just don't see it there. And thus the need to work individually with the senators and representatives of that area. And then finally, the idea that we should fully fund and continue our partnerships with our cities and counties and county conservation districts, because we really are leading things by years ahead of time of what organizations like the Stormwater outfit was. And they are not providing the funding to our cities. I know at Hugo was rejected last year by them for their next step in the stormwater conveyance system. And so that's, and I know the staff is looking for a way to do this now. It didn't fit under the grant program But, so, and finally, of course, we did get the grant in, and very thankful for that over there. And I want to make certain that to recognize Mr. Kyle Axtall's contribution to this. This would not have been done without his diligence. And even though he's left us for much, where he's a smart guy. He went to where the money is. That's the east side of Washington County, and they're in the one watershed, one plan. And finally, about one watershed, one plan. There's been some complaint the last few years that the soil and water conservation districts have been funded out of the Clean Water Fund. Big noise, lots of noise about this. And in the past history of the state of the soil and water conservation districts, which have been around since the 30s, the state general fund has been used to fund them for many, many years. It was, and then it stopped. And this year, Mr. Jaski's budget has $22 million in there to fund the soil and water conservation districts, which are really the primary agencies facilitating the one watershed, one plan. And he did say, although there are some hardcore watershed managers that want the money replaced, he said that would not happen, you know. But at least this time around, we'll have funding on it. Whether that becomes permanent again as it was for decades until it got cut for some reason, I don't know why, but that was good news also. That I can't think of anything else I want to confess to at this time, Mr. President.
Thanks, John. Marcy?
First, I'd like to thank staff for the website update this morning. Checked that right away to find out if we were open and when we're closed. So it was a nice presentation and gave me information that yes, indeed, we're meeting today. Thanks, Steve, too, for reviewing financials in my absence. So just be assured that those were reviewed as diligently as ever. I would also just quickly say that it looks like school boards have much tougher deliberations than we do here on this board. So God bless school board members. And the last one is the Panama Canal is an audacious undertaking. And I mean, if we think we have watershed issues.
I'll have to see if I can find the name of the book I read on that. It was
David McCullough's.
Yes, that's what I read.
The Division Between the Seas or something. Yeah. So I was in awe, and I also had my watershed management hat on while I was looking at it going, oh, I'd never be able to do that these days. Connect the Atlantic and the Pacific and all the challenges with that. So, yeah. Phew.
Steve, anything?
I do have a couple things. I'm glad to hear that David McCullough wrote a book about that. I didn't know that. I've read his
pages.
other books.
600 pages.
Wow, I'm gonna have to find that. But
a lot of people died making that thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
The only thing I'd like to say, I did attend the legal ditch seminar that was up in Alexandria that Chris took place in, and actually I got a lot out of it. So I thought it was a good time, and I think the staff that was there also did, from what I grasped. That's about it. I did go down to the Capitol on Thursday, and we weren't set up to talk to people, but my wife happened to be set up to talk to a lot of the same people and went with, so I did get to talk to more than I thought I would, so it did turn out to be a good day, but that's it.
Mr. President, just to echo Manager Wagaman's comments about the drainage meeting for the counties, that was mentioned in the executive session, and they went to the point to say that it was even better than the one Ricky Noonan put on.
Well, Ricky Noonan was very involved in this.
I realize that, but the persons on the executive committee I've recognized being at Ricky Noonan's meetings, and I haven't been to one of those in years, you know, but I've been to a few of them over the time, but that's at the point that they thought it was that good a meeting.
Yeah, so it was a good. I thought it was very.
Just to echo what you were saying about it, they were it was all the rage.
Yep.
I mean, not rage and anger, rage and.
Right.
Okay, so,
I'm done.
I will get together with Nick and see what we can put together for a short presentation to the senator, who I worked with, unfortunately, 40 years ago or so. He's been around that long, as have I. Secondly, when I was in Hawaii, they had Kunalo come through and dropped 11 inches of rain on Haleakala, and water does there what it does here. It goes wherever gravity takes it, and gravity takes it to the sea, and it went to the sea via the condominium next to the one that we were visiting, and wiped out the land around it, and it put a foot of mud on all the roads between it. And where here they bring out plows to plow the snow, there they bring out the plows to plow the mud. And the problem was primarily, and we would recognize this instantaneously, when they replaced a bridge, they didn't put it as a domed bridge, they put it as a flat bridge, and it becomes a weir. And it backs all the water up, and the water therefore goes outside the banks instead of running out into the ocean, as it otherwise would have, causing a large portion of flooding. And many of the people there were asking what their recourse was. So there you go.
Yep.
If you don't maintain your ditches and you don't maintain your infrastructure, you do far more damage than if you would. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
See everything.